Hi everyone, my name is Gabriel and this is the Hour of the Raven, your channel for everything Ravenloft, RPG, Dungeons and Dragons and horror. Today, we will uncover the past and secrets of Dominic D'Honaire, the aristocrat who holds the post of Chief Councilor of the Council of Brillance, and who is secretly a vicious mindbender and the Dark Lord of Dementlieu. Before we begin, I would like to remind everyone that this video will focus on the Dominic D'Honaire and Demolu from the classic Ravenloft setting, and will consider the events and characters that existed in the domain prior to the Van Richten Guide to Ravenloft reboot. At the end of my video coverage of Dominic D'Honaire and Demolu from the classic Ravenloft setting, I will make some considerations and comparisons with the new version of Demolu in the Van Richten Guide to Ravenloft. Are you ready? In our search for the missing Dr. Rudolf Van Richten and for the cure of lycanthropy, we reach Port-à-Lucien, the capital of Demolu, seeking the support of the famous detective and investigator Dominique Ray. Upon arriving in Port-à-Lucien, we discover that the detective Dominique was also missing after launching an investigation into a possible evil influence behind Dementlieu's society. After a dangerous investigation, we rescue the elf detective from the mind games of Dominic D'Honaire and the Living Brain, and brought him back to his office. Recovered from the mental domination, he finally reveals what he discovered in his investigations about the dangerous mind manipulator, Dominic D'Honaire. Hour of Raven. Monsieur Dominique Ray, it's a shame that a mind as brilliant as yours can come to such wrong conclusions about me. I assure you that my political influence is nothing supernatural, and I serve only the interests of the great nation of Demolu. If I may, detective, I suggest that you immediately drop these false allegations against me. Look at me. I see the conflict in your eyes. It is useless to resist. From now on, you will follow my commands, and you will serve me as a loyal obedient. Your priority would be to discover the identity of the criminal known as the Brain, and to exterminate this threat, even at the cost of your own life. Go, slave, and serve me well, and perhaps your insolence in interrupting me during the opera can be forgiven. Dominic D'Honaire is the Dark Lord of Dementlieu, a wicked and unscrupulous man who is a dangerous manipulator and mind-bender. Dominic D'Honaire's character adapts the theme of manipulation and abuse to the Ravenloft setting, portraying human horrors and perversities that are amplified by the supernatural capacity for mental manipulation. Some inspirations for the character may come from the treacherous Cardinal Richelieu, as portrayed in The Three Musketeers by Alexandre Dumas, with the horror aspects of his mental domination, inspired by works such as the novel Carry On Comfort by Dan Simmons, or from characters such as the villain Kilgrave, the Purple Man from the comics and TV series Jessica Jones, or even Grima Wormtongue from The Lord of the Rings The Two Towers. Dominic D'Honaire is a middle-aged man of medium height, nearly 60 years old. He has piercing blue eyes, and his head and beard were once dark red, though now are grey. He always kept his moustache and goatee properly trimmed and lined up. The aristocrat is always dressed in elegant and luxurious clothes, keeping with the latest fashion of Port-à-Lucien, but usually adopting more sober and discreet tones. He is always watching and attentive of the behavior of those around him. While not strikingly handsome, he has a strong presence and charisma, and can make himself strangely attractive and friendly if he so chooses, with only soft words and smiles. Those who know Dominic D'Honaire's public persona hardly realize his true personality. Dominic has a sharp intellect and a perverse and dominant temper, manipulating and abusing those around him to satisfy his own selfish interests. Although not a user of arcane magic, during the second edition, Dominic's supernatural abilities were on par with that of a 7th level enchanter. In the third edition of D&D, he was considered a 10th level aristocrat. His most dangerous gifts are his ability to influence people and dominate their minds. Dominic can use his voice to use a powerful suggestion on the minds of those who listen to him, and those who stare into the eyes of the aristocrat can be mentally dominated by the Dark Lord. With each new mental domination, victims of his power become increasingly susceptible to his mental attacks, and after 3 consecutive failures to resist him, they become obedient, slaves who are unable to resist Dominic's wills and commands. Only the superimposition of another different mental domination can free a victim from this servitude. In addition to being a skilled and cruel manipulator, Dominic is also totally immune to mental effects, which prevent other mindbenders and magic users from trying to outdo him in his own game of intrigue and domination. Despite wielding a rapier and pistol that can be considered masterpieces, Dominic is not a skilled combatant and rarely engages in direct conflict, avoiding such situations at all costs. If necessary, however, he usually has skilled armored bodyguards close by, who are completely enslaved to his commands and willing to die in his defense. Despite all the power and mind-controlling capabilities, Dominic D'Honaire is a man who craves insatiably for female attention and affection. However, his curse by the dark powers causes anyone he has any love interest in to see Dominic as repulsive and become immune to his mental powers. Dominic is the secret leader of demolu, although he avoids being in the spotlight. Occupying the position of Chief Councilor of the Council of Brillance, he has enslaved the Lord Governor and most of his peers, and rules and controls his domain from the shadows. When the Dark Lord of Dementlieu decides to close the borders of his domains, a powerful mirage forms on the border, and in whatever direction a traveler looks, he will see only the lands of Dementlieu. Those who insist on traveling forward will discover after a few hours to the point from which they started. But what dark secrets lurk in the past of the manipulative Lord Dominic D'Honaire? What cruel crimes turned this selfish and abusive aristocrat into the master of a network of intrigues and mind slaves? The Donaire family's connection to the mysteries of the mind can be traced a few generations back before Dominic in the lands of Mordant. The Donaires are a lesser aristocratic family of the region, although they never rose among the better known and more powerful aristocratic families of Mordant. This family clan had slowly and steadily rose in status and resources. In the remote past, rumors indicate that the family practiced healing arts and were followers of the Church of Hala, and as initiated in the mysteries of this creed, they gained ancestral knowledge of herbology to become well-known healers. as they became more known and integrated in modern-ish society. The family slowly dissociated itself from the Church of Hala, but kept their healing vocation through the practice of medicine. Countless members of the Donaire family have followed the vocation to act as healers and doctors over the centuries. Their services were sought after by members of the nobility and the commoners, and despite their renown, the family performed numerous charity services. The surname Donaire gained great reputation and renown through Germain Donaire, a celebrated physician who dedicated his life to the study of mental afflictions. His advances in this field made him renowned throughout the land of the mists, and Germain also became known as a master mesmerist, whose feats of hypnosis both impressed and frightened the public. Fame and reputation sparked Germain Donaire's ambition and led him to seek a new social position for his family. He pushed two of his three children, Claude and Bernadette, to improve themselves as members of the nobility and aristocracy through marriage, and he wanted his youngest son Maurice to become his heir to the medical profession. Germain's wish was for his daughter Bernadette to marry and join the aristocratic Weathermaid family, raising the Donaires to a new level in the social hierarchy. Bernadette, however, thwarted her father's wishes, marrying Hugh Mossel, a young man from Richelieu who was of Vistani descent. The act of rebellion caused a schism in the family, and father and daughter broke off relations. Bernadette and her husband moved to the south of Mordant, where she reconnected with her family past, in the Church of Hala and the practice of herbology. Bernadette's brothers, Claude and Maurice, joined their father in this family conflict, breaking off relations with their sister. Young Dominic D'Honaire was born in the year 700 of the Barovian calendar, but his arrival brought pain and tragedy to the Donaire mansion. His mother, Ernestine Fazier, died during childbirth, leaving his father, Claude Donaire, in charge of his son's education. The absence of a motherly figure would leave deep marks on Dominic D'Honaire, who lacked female attention and affection. The distant Claude Donaire always had his mind more focused on the politics and social ascension of his aristocratic family, and had no time for his son, leaving his care to wet nurses, nannies, tuttors, and servants. Dominic was a precocious and astute child, and closely watched the behavior of everyone around him. Lacking maternal and paternal attention, he learned early on to use his innocent appearance, words, and secrets he overheard to manipulate those around him. Extremely spoiled, he did not accept being thwarted in his desires, and showed a perverse behavior, reveling in the chaos generated by his games of intrigue and manipulation. These cruel childish games would soon have tragic results. Concerned about his son's future, Claude hired a very strict nanny to serve as his caretaker and tutor. His new tutor was a very rigid and unyielding, and Dominic couldn't bend her to his will by manipulation. He then decided to attack his tutor in other ways. Using his manipulative tactics, he spread intrigues to isolate his nanny, causing her relationships with other employees, her friends, and even her fiancé to deteriorate and break up. The nanny succumbed to depression and despair, and then Dominic abused and attacked the nanny's fragile mind, suggesting she should take her own life. The young nanny committed suicide by launching herself from the cliff walls into the ocean, and Dominic, just 7 years old, took immense pleasure in his evil deed. The nanny's disappearance was investigated by the local city watch, and the infant Dominic, still inexperienced in the manipulation of legal systems, feared that somehow his schemes and influence would be discovered. That same year, in 707, Germain Donaire, the renowned physician and family patriarch, passed away, and the family reunited to decide what to do with the inheritance. Fearing the legal repercussions of the investigation of his nanny's suicide, Dominic D'Honaire used his incredible gifts of manipulation to convince his father Claude and his uncle Maurice to abandon Mordant. Convinced that they would never reach the social ascension idealized by the family patriarch in the quiet region of Mordant, they gathered their share of the inheritance and prepared to move to other lands. The family's ancestral mansion in Mordantshire was left to their sister Bernadette. No one knows where was the final destination of the trip planned by the Donaire brothers and their family. However, as they crossed the border of Mordant, the mists enveloped them, acknowledging the evil of little Dominic D'Honaire and revealing the lands of Dementlieu as his cursed domain. The Donaire family then arrived at Dementlieu, but despite the culture and sophistication of this society, they found the land devastated by revolt and violence. A popular insurgency had deposed the last Lord Governor, executed in the public square by the guillotine, and the government was going through a period of anarchy and violence. While seeking social and political stability for the establishment of a new government, Dementlieu was also the target of a military attack from its new neighbor, the domain of Falkovnia. Vlad Dracov, the King Führer of the warlike kingdom, as soon as he received the first reports of the unveiling through the mists of the lands of Dementlieu, ordered his troops to start the annexation campaign. The Falkovnian annexation campaign was a bloody conflict, and Drakov's forces managed to penetrate deep in Dementlieu's territory. Defeat seemed imminent, but when the Falkovnian conquest appeared to be consolidated, there was a sudden change in the course of the war, and the Falkovnian armies were repelled. The reasons for this change in the war are still unclear, and the Dementlieu's conquest was only prevented by unknown factors. Some detachments of Falkovnian soldiers inexplicably and abruptly surrendered and betrayed their army, revealing their strategy and the position of the reinforcements and supplies, allowing the reaction and victory of Dementlieu's forces. Although the mystery of its events still hangs in the air to this day, it is likely that the little infant Dominic D'Honaire played a crucial role at the treason of Falkovnian forces. Had Dominic's family been captured by Falkovnian soldiers on their travel, could little Dominic, now a Dark Lord, imbued with supernatural powers by the Dark Powers, made their Falkovnian captors his first victims in Dementlieu? After the defeat of the Falkovnian invaders, Dementlieu's society was finally able to rise from social anarchy. Perhaps the presence of a common enemy united the population against a greater threat, and a new government began to form. When the Donaire family finally arrived in the capital Port-à-Lucien, Claude and Maurice settled in the city, and using their family resources, they acquired property and influence, quickly entering the troubled political game. The ambitious Donaires saw on Port-à-Lucien an opportunity for the political and social ascension they longed for. The widower, Claude Donaire, remarried and had 4 other children with his new wife, and went to play an important role in local politics. His brother Maurice, following the tradition and renown of his family, became a famous physician among the aristocracy, treating numerous illness and mental sufferings. He also married in demolu, having numerous children and consolidating the family presence in this domain. The Donaire's rapid social rise was not the result of chance. As he began to fully understand his powers, Dominique gained absolute control over his family members, as well as the society around them. Gradually, he used his mental domination and suggestion to bring wealth, power, and influence to the Donaires. Still too young to occupy a position of power, Dominique used his father Claude and his uncle Maurice as puppets for his plans. Despite his success in establishing himself as an important influencer of the aristocracy of this domain, he soon experienced the hardships of his curse as well. In his adolescence and youth, he experienced rejection and revulsion from his love interests, and found that they became immune to his powers of mind domination. His love frustrations caused Dominique to lose control. After one of his first experiences, in which a love interest was repulsed by him, he lost control of his fury and strangled the woman who rejected him. To date, this was the only murder he committed directly with his own hands, although many have already met their ends thanks to his nefarious influence. In the years that followed, Dementlieu faced another attempt of invasion by Falkovnia in the Executioner's campaign. This time, however, Dementlieu was prepared to face its enemies and managed to resist the onslaught of their armies. Despite success in defending Dementlieu against external attacks, Lord Governor Chambon did not find broad support from the aristocracy, who began to plot his deposition. Dominic D'Honaire played an important role in manipulating these games of intrigue, in order to gain the support of most of the Council of Brillance, to remove Lord Governor Chambon from his post, and later to lead him to social and financial ruin. In his place was elected Lord Governor Marcel Guignol, who raised his main supporter, Claude Donaire, Dominique's father, to the Council of Brillance as Chief Councilor. Despite supporting the new governor, Marcel Guignol, Claude Donaire enjoyed great popularity among the aristocracy and commoners, and many believed that it would be a matter of time before he himself overshadowed Marcel and assumed the post of Lord Governor. Dominic D'Honaire, however, had other plans. He soon discovered the value of manipulating events and people from the shadows, without attracting the attention and revenge of his enemies. Now old enough to occupy an important position in government, and having turned Lord Marcel Guignol into an obedient slave, his father has lost his usefulness as a puppet for his intrigues. Using his powers, Dominique caused Claude to suffer from a sudden and terrible mental illness. Dominic D'Honaire was appointed as his replacement to this position on the Council of Brillance. and remains in that position to this day. Over time, Dominique established a complex web of intrigue and manipulation. Like a spider at the center of a web, he observes and manipulates events around him, in complex and perverse games of intrigue and power. Dominique accepts no challenge to his power, and eliminates any possible threat to his position of privilege and abuse. Recently, however, he has discovered threats to his hegemony. The first threat to his absolute control is within his own family. Dominique is controlling and abusive and exerts tight control over the family affairs. The head controller of the family in Dementlieu is consulted on all matters, and his advice is seen as the final word on marriages, investments, political alliances, and even careers for his family members. Recently, some of the younger members of the Dementlieu's family branch have become rebellious and have acted against Dominic D'Honaire's advice and leadership. The resistance of the younger Donaire family members to his mental powers has caused him great dissatisfaction and has driven him to violent and vengeful behavior. In one of these events, his nephew, Gerard, dropped out his medical training at the University of Dementlieu after visiting the branch of the family that still resides in Mordant, and becoming inspired by the work done by his relatives at the Marseille Sanatorium. Enraged to discover that his nephew seemed immune to his powers, Dominique ordered his obedience to murder the young Gerard, as well as the elderly Aunt Bernadette and her husband Marcel, lest either of them seduce their family members away from their control again. Although the branches of the Donaire families of Mordant and Dementlieu have broken relations, this murder created a definitive rupture between the family, as Francois, the son of Bernadette, strongly suspects that his mother was murdered by members of the family branch of Dementlieu because of old family grievances and resentments. Other sinister and violent events seem to hang over family members who rebel against Dominique's advice, who, upon discovering some family members' resistance to his power, tightened his control and grip on his family even further. Another threat that seems to directly confront Dominique's power has risen in Port Alucine and seems to infiltrate its influence across many social strata. Dominique has discovered that some other entity has been using mind-bending powers on the people of Port Alucine. His rival, known only as the Brain, is the leader of a vast network of mentally dominated and influenced people, controlling a criminal organization, infiltrating violent and rebellious political movements, and even daring to infiltrate Dementlieu's aristocracy. The power of the Brain has grown, and his shadow causes Dominique real concern. Unaware of their rivals' true nature and identity, they wage a secret battle through their mind slaves, fighting for control over the minds of Dementlieu. For now, Dominic D'Honaire still maintains control over most of Dementlieu's aristocracy, especially among the nation rulers. Dominique currently controls Lord Governor Marcel Guignol and almost every other member of the Council of Brillance, who he enslaved and turned into their obedience at his command. Only the most recent member of the Council, Helene Dussuy, of the Councilor of Social Welfare, is free from his mental domination. The beautiful and slender Councilor has not been turned into an obedient by Dominique, who has a romantic interest in her. Dominic also wants to take advantage of Helen's independence to task her with investigating the mysterious identity of his rival, the Brain, who runs criminal activities in the city. The manipulative Helen, however, may be playing a double game, hiding information and waiting to see who the winner of this match will be. Dominic's romantic frustrations continue, but he managed to unite in marriage with Louise Giraud, a member of an important aristocratic family who was in financial decline. The marriage is devoid of any love, which prevents the curse of Dominic to take effect. From this union came his only child, the young Germain, who is currently 9 years old and whom he closely observes to see if the child has inherited his powers, or if he also will prove to be resistant to his mental commands. After a long conversation with Dominic Ray in his office, we realize the horror of Dominic D'Honaire's mental manipulation and the dangers that may come from these discoveries. Involved in the dangerous dispute between Dominic and the living brain for the control of poor Alucine, the detective Dominic Ray knows that he is walking a dangerous path and that his discoveries have made him a target. Paranoia has now engulfed his days in the city, for everyone around him may be an obedient or a mind slave, seeking to silence his discoveries to protect their masters. Aware that we too are involved in these dangerous games, he advises us to leave poor Alucine as soon as possible. First, however, we ask him for assistance in finding the whereabouts of the missing Dr. Rudolf von Richten. Join us, subscribe to this channel, and turn on notifications, and let's together investigate more about the possible whereabouts of Dr. Rudolf von Richten. But before we continue on our journey, in our next video, we will take a brief break to take a closer look at the Dark Lord Saidra Donaire and the new domain of Dementlieu as featured in the Von Richten Guide to Ravenloft for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition.